in a clerkship. When you're moving quickly through your history, you worked as a federal prosecutor in Michigan. What skills do you still use from your time as a prosecutor?
Well, first of all, I went to Michigan because I married Michigan.
Right,
my husband and I met at law school, and he is from Michigan, and so I felt like Michigan was a great place to go, obviously because I love my husband and he wanted to go there too, but also because we had a choice about whether we were going to come to California or go to Michigan. And a lot of people said, you're from California, he's from Michigan, and you chose to go to Michigan. Why did you do that? And the answer is because Michigan, we felt like we could have greater impact in a state like Michigan, which was struggling. And so in our egotistical way, we felt like, we might be, able to see the fruits of our labors. We wanted to work in community. We wanted to, we were active in homelessness and in, education, politics, and we lived in the city of Detroit, and we were really active with our local Detroit group, and it was a really great time. So I was excited to be in Michigan, and I was a federal prosecutor. I clerked on a court of appeals for a judge named Damon Keith, who was appointed by Jimmy Carter, and he had a huge amount of respect in the community and written some civil rights decisions that were breakthrough. So getting that experience in federal court made me comfortable with the federal system, and so I applied for, after a couple of other little jobs, I applied for to be a federal prosecutor. And those skills about going into a courtroom and owning the courtroom, are skills that, interestingly, you have to have as a politician, where you are not unafraid to argue a point, that you are confident enough to be able to slay your opponent in debates, that you know that you've got the facts and arguments, mastered. So I think I loved being a federal prosecutor because I felt like the court was my stage, and that I controlled the courtroom. And those other people here, they were just gnats. And I was, it was our show, the prosecution's show. It was a very fun experience.
But you've said that despite that being a prosecutor has been useful in politics, you've said that you didn't think about a career in politics until you were
absolutely
asked.
No, I wasn't. I mean, all of that is true.
Yeah.
But I wasn't thinking of gearing those skills toward running for office.
Right.
I always worked, as I mentioned, behind the scenes on campaigns and very actively working, in the Democratic Party and all of that. When I was a federal prosecutor, of course, you have the Hatch Act, so you can't be, publicly, overtly campaigning. But so I was always behind the scenes, happily working to help get people elected. And, in Detroit, we were working on school board politics and all of that. So after I was federal prosecutor, I had a really good rate of, conviction rate, and built up a good record. And I was asked to come and run Wayne County, which is the largest county in Michigan, and it's the county in which the city of Detroit sits. So I was asked to come and run their county law office, which is largely a civil office. So I'd had criminal experience. Now I was able to run the largest civil law office in the state, and loved that as well. It was only then that the then Attorney General, decided he was going to retire, created a vacancy, and the people I had been working with in the Democratic Party came to me and said, "Why don't you run for Attorney General?" And I was like, "Get out of here! No, I'm not going to do that." But they ended up persuading me only after I was able to have long conversations with my husband, who was very persuasive as well.
Was there one thing that persuaded you more than anything else?
My husband. Really? No, I'm not kidding you. I would not have been able to run because we had young children at that time, and I would not have been able to run without his support. And I say this frankly to women and men who are running. If you want to run for office, you've got to marry a spouse who is going to be 1,000% supportive.
One of the favorite things that I've read in your book, and also I read in another interview, is that your mom always told you 3 things. Not to ask strangers for money, don't talk about yourself because nobody wants to hear it, and don't wear your good clothes every single day. To me, that sounds like a career in politics. And so
except for she said don't do any of those things. And
right.
All three of
them are a career in politics.
Yes, exactly.
In order to be a politician. So how did you make the transition to being a candidate and for example, one of the most difficult jobs of asking people for money.
And this is what I always say to, especially women, I often try to encourage women to run, because women often have to be asked to run, like I was asked to run, and often guys are like, I'm running. and so therefore it might be even more difficult for women to ask for money, but it's true with many men as well, is that it's not about you, that it is really about the change that you want to make in the world. And so that means that if you're raising money, you're not raising money for you. You're raising money because you want to see a set of policies adopted that will change the world and make it better for people. It makes it much easier to do that. A lot of people will get on the phone, no problem, and raise money for, their favorite cause. Right. And so this is an important cause for making the world a better place.
What did you not know about running for office that you wish someone had told you?
When I ran for governor, I had no idea that I was walking into the collapse of the manufacturing backbone of the United States, which is the auto industry. Had I known, would I have run? I still would have run. But I would have done the things that we did. I just would have done them sooner had I known that it was not a cyclical economic problem, but rather a structural change in Michigan's and the nation's economy.
One of the things we've talked about in leadership is managing expectations.
Mm-hmm.
How do you manage people's expectations when you're a candidate while also selling yourself as the strongest candidate for the job?
This is a really important and good question, because when you're running for office, you don't want to attach to your policies all sorts of caveats about why it may or may not work. And yet, if you are to run for office, your language and your commitment in the policies that you adopt have to be straightforward and easy to grasp, simple. Sometimes simplicity is not what the problems that the world brings requires. So you do have to manage that. I think it's important to manage expectations by setting forth, especially when you're in office, steps to an ultimate goal, and celebrate each of those incremental steps along the way, even if they're not quite the goal itself. But you have to celebrate the victories of the incremental steps. For example, when I was elected, I'm a Democrat, and I had a Republican House and a Republican Senate and a Republican Supreme Court and a Republican Attorney General and a Republican Secretary of State. I was the only statewide elected Democrat in state government. So given that, I was not able to pull ahead with all of the things that I had said I was going to do in my 50-page campaign platform, because a lot of those would have been opposed by the folks in office. So I started by assessing what can I do as an executive, putting out plans, knowing that they're not going to get fully adopted, but they may get changed along the way, and celebrating, if I had to take a half a loaf, celebrating the half loaf and say, we're not quite there yet, but we're going to celebrate this step.
You have mentioned that you campaigned for John Anderson's independent campaign, and I also read that you campaigned for Gerald Ford as a teenager,
right.
And now you are obviously a self-described Democrat. Along with this changing partisan identity, has your beliefs in the role of government changed over time?
Well, I don't think I thought much about the role of government when I was in high school, going door to door for Gerald Ford. My folks are Republicans, and so I bought hook, line, and sinker what the philosophy was from home. But I definitely have an evolving belief in the role of government now, even as a Democrat. But because of being governor, knowing how incredibly important the role of government is in solving problems, but in providing basic safety net for people, but also in steering an economic agenda. And for people who think that you should be hands-off, that government should not have a role in that, I think they are completely missing what is happening in a global economy when our economic competitors are indeed very active. If we have a passive government in the face of activism by economic competitors, we will continue to lose jobs. And so my view of the role of government in solving problems has definitely changed over time, and I believe strongly in an active government, not a big government, but an active government to be able to solve problems.
Energy policy became one of your top issues as governor. In particular, you focused on promoting clean technologies and renewable energy. What do you think are the main obstacles we need to overcome as a nation to create a national energy policy?
I do think that people who believe that there's no global warming, obviously we have to do a lot more educating. And it's one of the reasons why I focused on clean energy as a job creator and didn't get into that debate, which seems so utterly ridiculous and unscientific. But some people are already listening, they already have their opinion, so you have to approach it from perhaps a different, more accessible angle, and jobs is one way to do that. So I think that fundamental position is a huge obstacle, but I think it can be overcome if you have job providers who are saying, I'll come to your region, your state, whatever, and create these jobs if you give me a market for these products. So approaching it from the economic angle, I think, is a huge opportunity. And I would also say that approaching it from the angle of what our economic competitors are doing and recognizing that for us to remain passive again is such a crappy strategy if we want to have an impact on climate and if we want to have an impact on jobs, because our economic competitors are providing markets for these products and they're doing it in exchange for job providers coming there. And we're going to miss the whole boat. We're going to be the biggest emitter of greenhouse gases, and we're not going to be able to even benefit from having job providers here who can help to solve that problem.
As someone who's interested from the environmental perspective of green technologies and curbing our greenhouse emissions, do you think something like Solyndra or that scandal will set us back?
Sure,
because
sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's an example. It's bad cases make really bad policy, and that's a bad case, unfortunately. And even though in that particular program there were 40 loans that were given, guaranteed, and 39 of them seem to be okay, and one isn't, it's always the one bad case that causes a particular program to be shut down, or, as we were talking about in class today, you get one bad actor who is who's released from prison, and all of a sudden a whole bunch of bad prison policies follow, or sentencing policies follow. So unfortunately, that's just the way the political system is, and you hope that the voices of those who are more rational and who say, look, our other countries are doing this. We know that when you place bets, sometimes you're going to fail. And in fact, you want to encourage that early risk because it's not happening in the private sector. And so the government has a role in some degree, way, shape, or form to be able to encourage those early stage technologies. But yes, I do worry that example is one that will prevent further investment in research, development, and commercialization of early stage technology.
So now you're working as a senior advisor to the Pew Charitable Trust Clean Energy Program and recently announced a political commentary show on Current TV. This is a very different role in policy change than you've held in the past.
Yes, it was an existential question about whether I even wanted to do a TV show, but anyway.
How do you see these roles as effective in promoting change in comparison to some of your past?
There's no doubt that being a governor or a president, you're in the best position for effectuating change. And I have a bias, of course, toward the executive branch because that's where my experience has been, being one of 435 people in Congress. There's a lot less that one person might be able to get done. But I do think that there is an exciting role for the ability to change public opinion. And what Pew Charitable Trust is doing is really enlisting the business community as the voice for the need to establish clean energy policy in this country. And so they have created stakeholder roundtables in regions all over the country, particularly focusing in regions where there's the greatest opposition in Congress to having national energy policy, where these business owners, these solar panel makers, these wind turbine, carbon fiber researchers and developers are saying to their elected members of Congress, I will bring X number of jobs, or I have this number of jobs here that are threatened unless we get a national energy policy. And so that's what Pew does, is to try to amplify the voices of the people who might be more persuasive in Congress to get something done nationally. All of that is focused, of course, is on the national level, as the governor's, focused on both state and national. Having a TV show is going to be, it's going to be election central for political junkies. So for any of you guys who care about this, it's going to be on Current TV. I'll be following Keith Olbermann, and on the West Coast that's 6 to 7 o'clock if you get Current TV. And if you don't get it, you should call Comcast and ask for it to be included in your cable package. But that show is going to be focused on both the policy and the politics of the 2012 election. Presidential, yes, but also the important congressional and senatorial races around the country. So that is going to be, for people like me who follow this and who love it, it's going to be a huge amount of fun. And I'm hopeful that I can have some Goldman School of Public Policy students helping to do some of the research on it. But it'll be filmed out of San Francisco, so it'll be really fun. And that too helps to change public perception. This will be a show coming from the progressive point of view, so I hope to be able to especially arm Democrats and the folks on the left side of the spectrum with facts to be able to help them make the case for getting out the vote, for responses to the arguments that they're hearing on the traditional shows, so that they are armed and ready.
You said it was a big decision to do the TV show, and now you're also teaching here at GSPP in Bolt. So how do you make your decisions about what's next in your career, and how has that decision process changed?
There's no rhyme or reason.
It just happens.
Sometimes somebody calls. In this case, Al Gore called and said, I really want you to come and do this show. Current is building out its primetime lineup, and I'm like, wow, I don't know. That's just really not something I've done, or and who knows, that might be a big flop, so it might be all moot. But I talked it over with my partner Dan, and we decided that since I'm here, and it's a nice way for me to be anchored here, so I've had to take a hiatus from Pew to be able to do this, because Pew requires a lot of travel, and so I'll be predominantly focused on teaching and the current TV, the War Room with Jennifer Granholm is what it will be called, as a sort of doff of the hat to James Carville and all of those political folks who run campaigns during the political cycles.
What guidance would you give a student who came to your office asking advice about running for office?
I would say absolutely do it. You have to build, a foundation. And I'm encouraged anytime somebody in this toxic environment, political environment, actually does want to put their toe in the Puranic waters of politics. But what I say to them is, first of all, you have to, credential up. It's great you're here at Cal. It's great you're going to law school or getting your master's in public policy. All that's very important. But when you're running, people want to know that you have some base of credibility on which to stand. And so credential up, meaning get some decent experience in some way, shape, or form, so that you can use that as a way to build your own talking points, your platform, your, whatever it is you want to change. And I think people need to go with their passion in terms of what specific subjects that they want, that they feel really drawn to. Go with it. You're not going to be an expert at everything. So go with what you really feel strongly about. And whatever door you enter through, you will see other doors. There will be a way to broaden that, that love to other subject areas. And I would also say that, like in everything, you don't want to run for office because it's about you, because it's just not about you. It is really about changing the world.
Thank you very, very much. That was really fun.
Yeah. Thanks so much, you guys.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.